it is going to be literally impossible to do a Spider-Man review without spoilers. So I'm assuming we're going to do this with spoilers, correct?
Yeah, we'll give you some time. We'll give you some time to get out and see the movie, and we'll get this out. But I literally can't talk about it in depth without. Shout out to Just My Opinion and E-Man and all those who do the non-spoiler reviews. Good on you. Great command on the English language. I can't.
Marvel just dropped Spider-Man No Way Home.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, we've been anticipating this. We dropped a trailer review not too long ago. And obviously, the thought going into this as well, are they going to do the thing?
They definitely did the thing.
And boy, did they. Boy, did they. This, well, I haven't seen Black Widow or Shang-Chi, so I can't speak to those movies. But no, still definitely probably one of the best movies I've seen this year. I think Tom Holland is a great actor in playing Spider-Man. I don't think, besides obviously Tobey, because I hold a special place in my heart for Tobey as Spider-Man.
Number one. He'll always be number one.
Yeah. But, and I like the fact that they mentioned this in the movie.
God help you sickos who pick Garfield.
I know somebody who picked, I went to the movie with somebody who picks Garfield as number one. It's so fucking weird. Anyway. I do like how in the movie they make Garfield number 3. That was great.
Literally.
No, man. Obviously, there was a moment around Spider-Man, and rightfully so, because it was definitely a great movie. Not without its faults, and I guess we'll get into that here shortly. But still, probably one of my favorite movies of the year.
Yeah, no, it was a very enjoyable film, and ironically, the thing that made it a great film to me, also its biggest detriment, and I'll do my best to kind of explain what I'm talking about. So, I like just the scale of this movie, right? Like, Jon Watts came into this like with an idea of like, I'm not gonna hold myself back. I'm not gonna limit myself. I'm not gonna say, oh well, let's try to, maybe I'll be doing Spider-Man 4, so I can leave a little bit for 4. Like, no. He had an idea of where he wanted to take this story, and he did it all in this movie.
Mm-hmm.
You could have very easily stretched this saga out for 2, maybe even 3 movies.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Oh yeah,
you absolutely could have. But they were. It seemed like they really took the training wheels off of Sony and let them go. So like the sheer scale of this movie is kind of what added to its excitement. It added to the overall performance of the film. The reason why I feel like it was the thing I liked, but also its biggest detriment, is because at the same time, this movie is very isolated. Right? I went into this, and maybe part of this is my expectations, because of the breadcrumbs that they've been leaving or whatever. But I did expect this to have a stronger tie back to WandaVision, especially considering that Doctor Strange was supposed to show up in WandaVision.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So like it was a little weird that, and obviously we got the after credit scene, and we'll get there. But in terms of just the telling of the story, I felt like Wanda would have had a little bit of a stronger influence, or at least just the events of Westview might have played a bigger role. But yeah, or Loki, mm-hmm. right? I know a lot of people thought at that moment, right before He Who Remains dies, when the Eternal Timeline dies, a lot of people thought that may have been Wanda and Westview, or or something like that. Like it just there were no threads back to Loki. There were no threads back to WandaVision, really. There were no threads back to any of the films that came out this summer, Black Widow or Shang-Chi or the Eternals. The one thing that I did see that was a callback back to what we saw in WandaVision was the chaos magic. When Strange is trying to keep the worlds from colliding back into Earth, he's using chaos magic. Who's he calling upon to use that? I don't know. You know what I'm saying? That'll probably be a a thing in Multiverse of Madness. But I felt like the scale was its biggest achievement and also its biggest detriment, because it worked in one sense that we got the 3 Spider-Man, right? We got Charlie Cox as Daredevil in the MCU, which a lot of fans. Hey, now look at there. Now look at there. 30,000 white guys band together to get Charlie Cox back into the Disney Studios, and that shit doesn't have to pop up on TMZ once.
That's a fact.
Sorry, it's not all white guys that were cheering for Charlie Cox to come back in the MCU, but take my point. It was a lot easier for that to get done. But yeah, Charlie Cox is in there. I think Happy Hogan is going to probably, I'm getting a little ahead of myself, but I think he's probably going to be one of the main focuses of She-Hulk, because he still needs a lawyer, and that's not going to be Matt Murdock, as he made very, very evident in the movie. So I think Jennifer Walters is going to be Happy's lawyer, at least to start out. That'll probably be her introduction, which is dope. I thought it was weird that she had just broken up with Happy.
Yeah.
I don't know. It just kind of seemed like out of place.
Yeah.
Like, I don't have a problem with it, but then, like, you're making the guy mourn her after, like, she just dumped him. That sucks. Like, that absolutely sucks.
Yeah, I think one of the other problems with it, having so much going on, that it was only a 2.5 hour movie. So some of those things you couldn't really develop probably the way you wanted to.
Yeah, no, that did not sink in at all. Like, after 2.5 movies of them being flirtatious and will they, won't they, and then they were dating at some point, and so now within the first 10 minutes, oh no, they broke up.
Yeah. And
then obviously, she dies, and now Happy is mourning her.
Mm-hmm.
But they broke up. So it's just kind of like a weird thing. Like, I didn't think it really needed to happen. But if it was going to happen, then maybe something happens with Hope, with Happy, so that he is not sitting there mourning the dead woman that just broke his heart.
True.
I don't know. I mean,
it's a little weird, I guess. But then on top of that, like, because you could only fit all this in 2.5 hours, you kind of have to rely on the viewer having seen the Amazing Spider-Man, the Tobey Spider-Man movies,
absolutely,
to grasp the character development in guys like Electro and guys like, obviously Green Goblin.
Yeah, now that is one thing I will say, is that people talk a lot about comic book movies and how you have to make them tailored to the general audience, and I think I spit on that. That's stupid, because if that were the case, then no one would like this movie. No one would like this movie unless you know what Electro's role was in Amazing Spider-Man. Then you don't really understand all of this bravado and all of this newfound strength and attitude from Jamie Foxx in this Spider-Man. If you don't understand Dr. Octavius, right, from Spider-Man 2, then you don't understand why he's so ornery, or why he's talking to his damn tentacles, or why it was such a big thing to get that connector off the back of his neck. Like, all of that context is lost on you. Norman Osborn, one of the most important parts of this movie, you completely do not understand the parallels in this movie unless you've seen them. And yet, this movie it had one of the best opening weekends of any film since Endgame.
Yeah. Yep.
So, yeah, no, you can stick to the source and still make it a popular movie. The only reason why you're making a movie in the first place is because the source was so popular.
Facts.
If the source wasn't popular, you wouldn't be making the movie.
Yeah. Yeah.
Some of you forgot that's the reason why these films exist in the first place, is because hundreds of thousands, millions of people stand these comic books before you ever saw it on television. They had to imagine it in their heads before you ever got to tap into Disney Plus and watch it unlimited. So ease up with you comic book readers, you're arrogant, or it's the general audience that really matters. No, general audience would not have been graced with the greatness that is the MCU if not for the comic book reader.
True that.
It would have never happened.
True.
So yeah, I do like that they they did tie it back into the former movies, even up until, you know, certain scenes like Andrew saving MJ.
Yeah.
Right, where he wasn't able to save Gwen.
Yeah.
Or Octavius being able to help stabilize the other villains, even though him not being able to stabilize himself is what ultimately cost him his life. Mm-hmm. Right? Those are interesting character developments, parallels. Like I liked it. But that doesn't happen if you're not sticking to the source. If you're just trying to do a soft reboot of those films, it doesn't work.
To provide another example of how, you know, obviously you only have 2.5 hours to develop things, I don't feel as if the relationship between obviously Garfield, Maguire, and Tom Holland, I don't feel like it developed as it potentially could have, because they only came in halfway through the movie.
Yeah, so the leaks, I think, had a lot to do with when they got introduced into the story. Because initially, when we were hearing about Garfield and Tobey coming into the fold, it was kind of pitched as a live-action Spider-Verse, which this was and wasn't that, right? It was in the sake that we got all the Spider-Man, right? We got the different variations of Peter Parker. It wasn't in the fact of their universes were not very interconnected. Mm-hmm. Everything was happening in the 616 universe.
Yeah.
Right? There was no universe hopping. There was no multiverse hopping. It was just, hey, these guys showed up because you messed up my spell. That's another thing too. Like Doctor Strange. Okay. So I'm really starting to fear for our mystical realm. Because if Stephen Strange is the greatest Sorcerer Supreme there ever was, that's what the Ancient One said in Endgame. He was to be the best of us about Stephen Strange. If he's the best, and we have now had not one, not two, but 3 multiversal events now that Stephen Strange has not been able to stop. It's not really a leap to say that Stephen Strange, if he is the best, then Sorcerer Supremes just suck. Like the protector of our mystic realms just sucks. They suck ass. If he's the best, they suck. Wanda got off on Westview. Loki and Sylvie destroyed the sacred timeline. And now Peter Parker brought all his multiversal villains to Earth 616. Oh, and a few other Spider-Man too. What was that thing about not seeing yourself or not interacting with yourself that the TVA was talking about? We didn't get none of that.
Yeah.
We didn't get any of that. And again, that kind of goes back to what I was saying. It's the scale of this thing is its biggest pro and also its biggest con. Because where was the TVA? Where was the TVA?
But you wouldn't even had a chance to fit that into it. And if
if
you didn't see Loki, that would have been a whole.
It didn't have it could have had just about as much as relevancy as Matthew Murdock popping up for the short amount of time that he did. Like into the movie, they come to prune the timeline. One of the Parkers explains, "All is well. We're going back right now. Don't have to worry about it."
Fair enough.
At least it gives that connectivity, because right now, or at least before this movie, we were operating under the assumption that anytime there is a variant in a timeline that he doesn't belong in, that the TVA shows up, prunes the timeline, and gets him out of there every single time. So did this happen after the TVA was disbanded? I don't understand that either. I don't know where this happens in continuity. I don't know when this is happening. Did this happen after he destroyed the TVA? But then we know that there's still a TVA, because even after they destroyed the timeline, he ended up in some other universe with a TVA.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, a lot of things about continuity and just overlapping story, like how this builds on the MCU. This was much more isolated than I would have anticipated.
Mm-hmm. I also feel like when May says the with great power comes great responsibility line, like it just, that scene kind of seemed phoned in. It seemed like, okay, yeah, we got to make a connection
Well, so it became clear by the second movie that they weren't going to do the Ben storyline, right? The Ben story arc.
Yeah.
But again, sticking with source material here, which they seem to always be able to do for characters like Spider-Man or Superman. It's crazy. But sticking with the source, the one of the driving forces for Peter Parker and one of the reasons why he jokes so much to distract his enemies, but is also to kind of get over the tragedy that he's experienced in his life.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of tragedy for Peter Parker. Starting with the loss of his uncle, right? And I don't have a problem with them, flopping it. There was no Big Ben.
Sure.
Right? There was no Big Ben. The scene itself, I don't know, man. So it's not. That's not the part of it that pisses me off. That she said the line. I mean, I'm not
mad about it. I just feel it's underdeveloped without the context.
Well, yeah, no, like they didn't do a good job of establishing, like, okay, well, this is Big Ben in this universe, I guess. Like, because May has her own role to play in Peter's life.
You know what I mean?
So it was weird seeing her be a single May. But then they just kind of mashed the two characters together.
Yeah.
With her doing it. So I guess I understand that. But the part that really messed me up was the glider. So when this glider hits Norman Osborn in full armor, it splits him in half and kills him. It hit May. She able to stand up, talk, walk around for a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Come on, man.
Yeah.
Come on. Not a huge thing. That one's not big, but it is something that made me suck my teeth in the movie. I was like, man, I watched this thing split Willem Dafoe in half.
Mm-hmm.
Instantly. Like, you would have thought it just tripped May.
Yeah. But that, I mean, as far as the movie, those are kind of the things that I just kind of looked at and I was like, But I don't think it was enough to completely ruin the movie for me. Speaking of Willem Dafoe, I thought he did an amazing job. I do like that, apparently he asked specifically to do the action scenes.
Yeah.
Which dope.
Which were that fighting scene with Green Goblin in the I don't even know where they were at, that building. But that fight scene between him and Norman, better than anything in Black Widow, including all scenes with Taskmaster. Better than everything except for maybe the bus fight scene in Shang-Chi. And just flat out better than any fight scene in Eternals. Easily better than any fight scene in. So definitely the best MCU fight sequence of the year was Willem Dafoe and Tom Holland and No Way Home. For sure.
Solid scene.
That shit was hard.
Yeah.
Even the bridge scene was pretty good.
Yep.
Bridge scene was pretty good.
Bridge scene was solid. And obviously the ending, like all the action scenes were pretty
dope.
Pretty fire.
Pretty dope. I do like the way that they kind of, if this was your first time hearing about a multiverse, you didn't see Wanda or Loki, and this is your first time hearing about the concept, I do think they did a good job of dumbing it down to the point where everybody consumed it pretty easily.
Yeah, it was easy to grasp,
very
for
easy
sure.
concept to follow. They didn't overcomplicate it. They didn't convolute it. I think that'll go a long way for potential plans. But then again, I don't know if there's an overlapping like arc here for the MCU yet. It just seems like everybody's off on their own shit. Everybody's doing their own thing. Yeah. And that's kind of how Phase 1 started. But then again, there was always connective tissue to let you know that there was a overlapping arc here. Mm-hmm. There was Tony Stark at the end of the Hulk movie. There was Nick Fury at the end of Iron Man. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? And so on and so on. And eventually, you can see a team forming. You can start seeing a common threat start to appear. That's not happening here. Like, yeah, everybody's getting in. There's new characters getting introduced, and Jesus Christ, Multiverse of Madness seems like it is going to be absolute madness. So now I saw America Chavez is going to be in there. So America Chavez, Wanda, Doctor Strange. I think Monica Rambeau is supposed to be in that movie too. So like is that our future of MCU films? Is just like, we ain't got a whole hell of a lot to do with the story here, so we'll just throw a bunch of characters in there to kind of. And that, let me be clear, that's not what I feel about No Way Home. Yeah. But there's potential there, because if there is a critique for the MCU in Phase 4 so far, it's that the connective tissue between all of these projects is not there yet. Yeah, we're still very early. We're still very early, but it hasn't shown up just yet.
That was obviously Doctor Strange teaser trailer was kind of the post-credit scene too. But I really liked how they did the first one, because that was obviously Tom Hardy's Venom character, and obviously he went away into his own universe just like everybody else did, but then obviously the symbiote is still there, and it kind of brings it into this universe.
It's a copy. It's a cop out.
You think so?
I hated that. Yeah, it's a cop
Did you?
Because
I kind of liked it.
Just bringing Venom into our MCU. Right? Like, why? I do not understand what the point was of phasing him in here. I get it. He was a Spider-Man villain. Okay, cool. He never met Spider-Man. He's not going to have a chance to meet Spider-Man now, because Spider-Man's still here in 616. Just no one knows who he is, but he's still going to be here. So I'm double frustrated, right? Because I don't clearly understand what's going on. So Tom Holland is going back to Sony, and they're going to make movies for their own Spider-Man verse that is still present in the MCU. So what, for the next 10 years, we're just going to ignore the fact that there's a young web slinger in New York? Is that what we're doing? We're going to pretend he doesn't exist? Like, no, man. I would have much rather him have to go to another universe. And then the Venom thing is like, well, if you're going to put Venom in the MCU, it's still going to be a Sony property. Like, you don't own the rights to Venom.
Yeah.
Right? Like, he's going to be your MCU version of Venom. So that separates them to a degree, so that they're able to do whatever they want to do with Tom Hardy's version, and MCU can do theirs, right? But the point I guess I'm getting to is that it's a continued relationship. You're still using their IP. If you can continue the relationship for that, why is Spider-Man leaving?
Yeah.
Like, that definitively ties Sony to Disney for however long they end up using their version of Venom. The same way Spider-Man is tied into Disney for however long you depend on using Spider-Man. I don't get the point. I really don't. It just seems like it was senseless dick measuring that ended up with him being at Sony, but them having to do all of these is kind of like cop-outs to keep the connection there for whenever they want to revisit it. Like, if that was what you were going to end up with, I felt like you probably just could have just left them in the MCU.
Yeah.
Because if Tom Holland is here and Venom's over there and you own both properties, how are you ever going to bring them together? How many times are you guys going to do this multiverse thing? I don't understand the table setting, I guess. It's clear that this was a MCU goodbye, right? With him saying goodbye to Ned and MJ. But it's not really definitive where they go from here because, again, Tom Holland did not leave this universe.
Yeah.
Overall, good movie, though.
Definitely a good movie. And like I said, still one of probably the better movies that I've seen this year.
I think it still has the potential to be the best MCU movie in Phase 4. That's just me.
I don't think that's.
I
don't think that's a hot take.
Probably going to be the best movie of Phase 4. I don't know where this ranks on my all-time list. Maybe we could do that for like an end of the year or something like that. We can maybe throw it up as a viewer's choice. Okay. Our top 10 MCU films. I don't know where this would rank, but I know it's there. It's definitely there. Give us your thoughts in the comments below. Go ahead and rate it 1 through 10 and tell us where it ranks on your all-time MCU list.
And make sure you check out our teaser review, which we did not too long ago. And below, I'm sure we have our Everything Marvel playlist. Check out some of the clips that we have talking about different Marvel topics. And make sure you subscribe. We'd like to talk about some of these Marvel films. Obviously, we have our recast T'Challa things that we do. Make sure you check it out.